Hey everybody, Aaron Blaise here, and it is Thursday, February 7th, and we are going to do a live stream. We've been away for a couple of streams now, or one stream? Anyway, been away for a little while. I was in Montana, and boy, that was a whirlwind trip. I flew up to Montana on Thursday night. I spent Friday and Saturday chasing animals, and then came home Sunday. That was really quick.
Yeah,
You missed me though, didn't you?
a little.
Yeah. So it was great. We went to, and I'll show you some of the photos in a little bit, but we flew up to Bozeman, Montana, got together, and went and saw our friend Troy, who owns Animals of Montana Inc. And they have cougars and wolves and bears and all kinds of cool Montana wildlife that he brings out and puts them in their natural setting, and we photograph and draw, and it's a really great experience for those types of animals that you can't get quite that close to in the wild. So it's a great opportunity to gather reference and draw these animals in their natural habitat. So we did that on Friday, and then Saturday we went into Yellowstone National Park, which I've never been to in the middle of winter, and chased around a lot of wildlife there. So it was bison and coyotes and elk and all kinds of great stuff. And one of the things that struck me while I was there, it's just the beauty of the landscape, obviously the beauty of that world, and I was thinking about that in conjunction with the question that I get a lot, and that is, do I like abstract art? And I do, and for me, my representational art always has, if I'm doing a full scene, it always has an abstract approach, abstract design first, then representational stuff afterwards. And so I thought, you know what, that might be something good to talk about today. I wanted to kind of really maybe get a little more structured in a lesson today, and talk about kind of the way I see abstract design, and then how I apply it to my work, and it's kind of fun. And so I thought we could do that today. And so you can see I sat down, and really quickly, I mean, this took me, it took me 20 minutes to scribble out these little digital abstract images, just using three colors, black, white, and red. I love using those three colors. And this is an exercise that I do quite a bit, where if I'm just kind of at an impasse, I'm stuck, whatever it might be, I will sit down and I'll just do abstract work, just find designs and that are pleasing and balanced and that sort of thing. And then sometimes I'll hit something that I go, ooh, that could be such and such, and I'll turn that into a representational painting. But I want to kind of take you through, some of that transition, how I think about that. But as usual, I've got my trusty son, Dustin, to my right.
Hey, everybody.
And he's going to be fielding questions on Facebook. And then over in Sarasota, Florida, I've got my business partner, Nick Birch, and he's going to be fielding questions on some of our other platforms. And so I thought, why don't we just go ahead and dive in? So let's go to, we can either do over the shoulder or go to my screen.
Go screen.
We're on the screen? Okay, good. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, one of the first things, I love black and white, just black and white abstract work. Hold on real quick. I've been talking and I need to hydrate.
Stay hydrated, my friends.
Oh, delicious ice water. There's nothing better. I'm a huge fan of Japanese calligraphy. For me, that's, and it's interesting because Japanese and Chinese calligraphy at one time, they were meant to be they were representational symbols of different things, and over time they've kind of morphed and evolved into what they are now. But I see them as these very beautiful, abstract, elegant pieces of work just in themselves, and really Japanese calligraphy and Chinese calligraphy are works of art in their own right. And so they, children train to hold the brush and create the brushwork in the right way. And I just find that so fascinating, and I find the marks on the paper very pleasing. And this is one of the first places I discovered as a kid when I was looking at this stuff. I couldn't understand what I loved about it, because it wasn't animals, it wasn't cartoons, it wasn't fantasy stuff. It was just marks on paper, but I found them so pleasing. And it wasn't until I got into college and started to understand composition and abstract work and that sort of thing that I started to realize that these marks on the paper were kind of striking me in an emotional way just because of how they were laid out. And it's our brain that kind of sees the balance and imbalance and those types of things that in calligraphy and abstract design that causes us to react emotionally. I think that's the same reason why we like music. Music, to me, it kind of is the same thing because it's not representational of anything, but you have emotional responses to certain types of music and the way that it's played. And I think abstract work in its purest form done, and I'm talking about abstract work that is meant to break up the two-dimensional space in pleasing, interesting ways. Not abstract work that's just meant to get some kind of reaction out of you, like a blank canvas or a toilet on the side of a wall. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the making marks on a two-dimensional surface in order to create an emotional response. And so that's something that really I responded to early on, was this Japanese calligraphy. Let me go in here real quick.
Before you go any further, you forgot another detail.
Oh, I forgot Nick.
Yep.
Nick. I always do that. It wasn't only me. You forgot him too. My old friend. All right, let's see here. Let's pull up Nick. Deep Thoughts with Nick Birch. There we go. There you go. I see you now, Nick. Jake on YouTube asks, Eric, can you answer this question? Maybe change my life? Okay. Let's say I'm painting from a photo. I squint my eyes, and the value I've put down looks very close to the one on the painting. Like 90% close, maybe 95%. Can that close of value that it's hard to see the difference when squinting still create the sense of roundness and form? Does it have to be perfect, or am I a fool? No, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can have a very subtle change in value and get a sense of form. Absolutely. You can have drastic changes in value and very subtle changes of value. Look at a foggy day. If you go out on a foggy day and everything is very, very close in value, but you can still sense form. So that's, look at that, and the same difference as walking out on a bright sunny day where you get the whole spectrum of values from dark to light. Light is relative to the values next to it. So if you have something, even if it's slightly lighter or darker, you're going to get a sense of change. So absolutely, you're absolutely right. If I answered the question right, if I understood it. Real quick, I want to jump over now, and I want to show you some of these images. So here's some calligraphy here that I just found very pleasing, and I just wanted to pull these up. And for me, the rougher they get, I find them even more pleasing. There's something about, it's almost like a Rorschach test. You might see representational form or something in here, but there really isn't. And it's just very pleasing brushwork. And that, to me, I respond to that. And you see this in nature. This is what's really important. When I sit down and I have a painting, a representational painting, that's meant to represent three-dimensional space. But at the same time, it's on a two-dimensional surface, right? And so I try to think about that two-dimensional surface first. How am I going to break up that two-dimensional surface in a pleasing way? Not just black and white, but black, white, gray. How am I going to break it up into values? And I'll show you some exercises here in just a second. So here's the calligraphy, and there's calligraphy up on the upper left. But then taking the same idea... Here's the same idea and taking it a step further. Now it's not calligraphy anymore. Well, I guess it is in a degree because you're using the brush. But these are images here that are just abstract design. So you're taking that same idea and creating abstract work from that. And here's that black, white, and red right there. See that bold black, lots of white in the background, and just a little bit of red. And there's something there that I find extremely pleasing. And that is the balance that I'm talking about, that I try to find in my representational work, I look first for this type of design. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I have a Detlef Tibax on YouTube says, Aaron, I didn't know you were friends with Manny Carrasco. I was just in Montana with him, as a matter of fact. I was following him on Instagram and suddenly saw you guys together yesterday. Well, we were. And he's a great guy. And hopefully he's listening today. Yellowstone National Park. Yeah. Oh, Dustin. Dustin's tired. I see it. Dustin's tired.
I did explain myself earlier.
Dustin was up until 3 a.m. with his sister playing cards. Cards
Against Humanity.
Cards Against Humanity. Yes.
And with her coworkers and all that.
Yeah, I think that's cool. So anyway, so here are some great examples of Japanese calligraphy done giant, really big. Oh, the brushes are almost like mops. I had a picture. Where did that go? I had a picture somewhere of a fellow. There it is, right here. So here's a great example of taking the idea of calligraphy, blowing it way up, giant, and getting these beautiful abstract works on paper. And I would kill to do something like this. I just find this absolutely fascinating. And stick with me too, because I'm actually working towards the way I see abstract design in my representational work. So these are some of the first things that have always influenced me, and the way that those black marks break up the white space, and obviously vice versa. Especially if you put more ink down than there is paper, you'll end up with the negative and the positive space kind of switching back and forth. So there's that. Now there's an abstract artist. If you take it to the next step, Franz Kline is one of my favorite abstract artists. So look at this Japanese calligraphy. Now look at Franz Kline. And let me drop these out real quick, just so we are not distracted. Franz, go ahead, Dustin.
Question?
Sure.
Hi, Aaron. I'm really starting to dive into animal drawing and animal photography. Can you recommend a good extensive encyclopedia or online source for animal species?
I don't know. As far as that goes, Google is the best I've been able to do. I really don't have that many books. I have a few, but they're not really encyclopedias. I try to go to the source. I try to go the animals that I know not everyone can do that, but I've spent, I'm 50 years old now, so I've had some opportunity, and I've pretty much spent my life with that goal in mind, trying to get to where the animals are. So, and I had those goals when I was a little kid, poor, growing up in a little trailer out in the Everglades. I just knew that no matter what, I was going to do this, and so I always made it my goal to someday make these journeys. And so over the last 35 years, I've been able to make it to Africa and make it to Alaska and Wyoming and Montana and all these different places that have the animals and the wildlife that I am interested in, and I go there and I photograph them and draw them myself. So over that time, I've been able to build up a library of images that I've shot myself. And so that's basically what I pull from, and it's those experiences actually that help me with my art as well, because I was there. I was smelling it, breathing it, living it. Those experiences work their way into your work, and it allows you to create animal drawings and art that are much better than if you had just learned the animal from an encyclopedia or from Google. That being said, I know that many people can't get out there, and this is going to be their first start. I don't have any suggestions for you as far as what particular books to use, because there's so many out there, and I just don't use them anymore. But Google is such a great resource, so that would be my number one probably direction to put you in. But real quick, I want to jump back to our subject real quick before we go back to any other questions.
And Nick has one for you up there.
Oh, Nick says, when you make the squad sound, your lip with your lips. People think you farted on the stream. When I what? The I just have a way of going, hey, let's go get the and get out of here. The people thought I farted. It's a bad habit, and everybody, I started out doing that when I was a kid because it made people laugh, and now I'm an adult and I still go, let's go, or whatever.
And with that, we lost half of our viewers.
I know, that's funny. So anyway, let's get back to our lesson. That was good. So this is Franz Kline. And some of you may not like it. Some of you may like it. But to me, this is a step. So now we've stepped away from the calligraphy. And to me, this is still kind of it's the same idea. It's breaking up white space, two-dimensional space, the rectangle into pleasing shapes. It's still not representational yet, but you can see how this can lead to now starting to get into representational ideas. It's once again, it's almost like a Rorschach test. These are by no means representational at all, but if you stare at them long enough, you start to see things in them, and I find them very pleasing. Especially this green one right here. I find this one very pleasing. This one to me starts to get a little bit even, but I appreciate what he's done. I find this one pleasing. This one here. It's when you have a big disparity in the balance, like there's a lot of white and a little bit of black, or a lot of black and a little bit of white. It's when things are uneven, and you know I'm always talking about unevenness is what you want to find in your character design, in your art, in your music. If things are too even, they become boring, and so that's why I felt like this one here gets a little bit even and starts to fall to the boring side for me. But here, things are uneven in these images up in here and down here, and I find that very pleasing. And you'll start to see landscape, you start to see trees, you start to see animals, you can see buildings. And once again, these are just abstract images, a two-dimensional space broken up. But then you can see now the next transition I want to take you on is this idea of seeing this in landscape, seeing it in rocks and lands and animals and all of that. Nick says, sorry, I'm jumping off real quick. We're planning on building a library of animal reference for subscribers. That we should have that out this year. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. So all of the thousands and thousands of photos that I've built up over the years, I want to share them with you. And so, not all of them, because that would just be impossible. I've got hundreds of thousands. But we want to go through and find some of the best stuff and put together a library for subscribers so that you'll have a resource, at least the same resource I have of some of the animals that I've photographed over the years. African wildlife, North American wildlife, that sort of thing. So we're going to hopefully get that out to you this year. So here is Franz Kline. So I really recommend looking at Franz Kline's work and look at it from this standpoint, just like a calligraphy, just the way he breaks up the space, because I find his work extremely pleasing, extremely wonderful to look at. And the other thing that's great about his work, if you ever see it in person, which I have, is they're monumental. They're just giant pieces that really... I don't know. It's hard to explain because they're just, some people that don't get it, they'll walk up and say, I don't get it. But for me, I just see these beautifully arranged shapes. When he gets up there and uses that black and white paint, it creates something that's very pleasing. And so if I jump over now, let's go over to some of my photographs that I shot just over the weekend while I was in Montana. And one thing I want to do, I want to jump down real quick. I want to show you some of the landscapes. Where were they? That was on the, where was it? Yes, and here. So let's make these a little bigger. There we go. So here's some bison photos I shot, but look at some of these landscapes. Right here, for example. If I Open these. So if you look at, I mean, these are completely abstract shapes. It's very representational. It's a river in the snow with ducks in it. But if you can break away from seeing representational work and think of it as a two-dimensional space that's being broke up in a very abstract way, then all of a sudden you'll start to see your design a little bit differently. So, for instance, let me take this and I'm going to put it up here just for now, because what I want to do.
Do you have any brushes
Whoa!
you recommend for?
Look at that, Dustin.
Huh?
I don't know what's happening, but look at that.
Huh?
That's weird. I'm going to come over here.
Do you have any brushes you recommend for an oil paint effect? I think for Photoshop.
Yeah, we've got some dry brush oil painting brushes on our website.
Okay.
Yep. So I recommend those on the website. So I'm just going to go. I'm going to keep them small. Just there we go. Keep it basically in the same format. So now, having looked at those landscapes, I can look at it, and I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So now I can come in, and if I look, I got.
Will you draw an abstract gorilla today?
No, I'm not going to draw an abstract gorilla today. So here, all of a sudden now, I'm just looking at landscape, but I want to look at just the dominant shapes.
Making happy little abstract mountains.
Yeah.
Happy little mountains.
So here, there's an abstract design. That's your very basic. And actually, I'm getting here. That's at a little bit of, because I don't want it to be even. There's your black and white. Now that's maybe a little more than I want in there. But now let's add gray. So this is the exercise that I really loved when I was at Ringling. One of my instructors challenged us to, and we did this at Disney as well, to use just black, white, and gray to create pleasing imagery. And you can be abstract with it. And one of the things they talked about is trying to let one value be dominant, the other value be secondary, and the third value just being an accent. So now, with that third value, we've got this little bit of a landscape. I know it's just abstract, but it's a landscape to me. And, I've got the gray is the dominant value, with black being the secondary and white being the accent. And if I take and bring down, don't bring me down. Here we go. If I come up here and grab this black and white right here, and then come over here,
Ready for a new question?
nope, hold on one second. So this was the inspiration. So, I know they look completely different from each other, but they're not all that different. So here's the inspiration between the two. So you can see, in this landscape, and actually I could go in on this guy and probably add a few ducks if we wanted to, and all of a sudden you've got your representational right there. There's our ducks. But this is how I see my design when I sit down to start designing any image that I'm doing. I try to look at it from this standpoint first. I try to find those bold, almost Franz Kline Japanese calligraphy. I try to find those bold, abstract designs, diagonals, whatever it might be, and then from there I start to break it up and turn it into something real. This is one that I just did over is it? There's my links. This is an image that I just created the other day. It's a links painting. But once again, now that I've talked about some of that abstract design, I want you to look at how the rocks are laid out, how the background is laid out, how the white of the snow. Even though this is a very representational image, it's a very abstract design. And so, if I put this over here and go here, and let's fill that in.
Oh, you hid Nick.
What's that? Oh, I did hide Nick. Nick, I had to move the albums. Nick says, having seen Jackson Pollock's work in books when I was younger, I thought it was terrible and didn't get it. But once I saw them at true scale in person at the Smithsonian, At the Smithsonian, it was amazing how much depth they had. Completely changed my opinion. I completely agree with you, Nick. Jackson Pollock was one that, for me, I think I always thought of his work as the process was more interesting than the final image. You know, the idea of just the act of dripping the paint and all that, to me, I thought that was the art until, like you, until I saw some original Jackson Pollocks in person, and then all of a sudden I fell in love with the actual finished pieces. And I absolutely agree with you. But Jackson Pollock's an interesting one because it's so even. Many of them are so even in the way that everything's distributed, the patterning and everything, to where that in itself becomes an even field, and all you have to do is, and I think he did it in a few of his pieces. There's a splotch of red or a splotch of yellow or whatever that'll catch your attention. That's outside all the pattern of the drips, let's say, and that becomes the art in itself. But here on the links, I'm going to knock this back just a little bit, and I just want to show you kind of that. Here we go. So I want to show you. So I've got some of this. Go ahead, Dustin. Sorry.
Dave Clayton says, "Hey, A.A. Ron
Hey,
Blaise.
Dave Clayton.
You're my biggest fan."
Dave Clayton. I love Dave Clayton.
I love Dave.
I just love him so much. That's a reference from Raising Arizona. Just for those of you that don't know. There's just something there I find interesting. I'm not sure if I'm breaking this up right yet or not, but I'm going to try it. And then we're going to go to gray. And to me, the links is basically the same value as the rocks. So you get this very interesting abstract. At its purest elemental form, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at. And I know it seems kind of weird, but this is what I think this is part of it as well, that shadow. And I like it better that way because it's, I think the gray and the background maybe are a little bit even, but that's okay. And then let's go one more. We're going to go to white.
How do I persuade my girlfriend that I have to get a Cintiq? She says that I do good art with my tablet.
Well, I feel you. I feel you, brother. I don't know what to tell you. Because if you're spending the money on a Cintiq, that means you have the money to spend on something else for her. I think. I don't know. I know. I don't know what to tell you, man.
They say that it'll make your life easier if you're able to actually draw on the drawing and not look away while you're doing the drawing.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so there's kind of a way of breaking up the space, and also I could also look at it in this way from an even more fundamental standpoint. Right here. Turned all this down.
Is there a reason why
We
you
could,
don't
you know.
use the fill bucket tool?
Yeah, I'm just late. I'm just because I don't think about it. I don't think about that digital. I'm still thinking about this as old school. So I sit down and draw. I don't think about using fill tools. I never use the fill tool. That's weird.
You're so
I know.
lazy.
You're so lazy. So here's basically the one way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at it. Breaking it down even more simply. There's another way of whoops. There we go. There's another way of looking at it like this, which is whoops.
Have you ever drawn with a ballpoint pen? I love to do that to stop myself from erasing and not be too much of a perfectionist. And I teach myself to draw loose too.
I draw with ballpoint pen a lot. Yes. I have sketchbooks filled with ballpoint pen.
And towards a person, I was asking like how to persuade his girlfriend. Like somebody wrote, "If you like it, put a ring on it," is what she's basically saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. So there's another way of looking at it. So this is very just abstract, right across the paper. But these elements are in here. Whoops, what am I doing? There we go. Oh, turn that off. There we go. So that's all there. So that, I think about how are these big spaces, these big areas breaking up the two-dimensional space within the frame, and then I break it down even further until I create something that's representational like this. And then you get into lighting and rendering and all of that. But that initial stage, that initial start, what is that design? How are you going to break up the space? And I also, since the cat is just from a compositional standpoint, this is completely unrelated, but from what we're talking about. But just from a compositional standpoint, the cat is our focal point, and basically the eyes and face are the focal point of the cat. And if you notice, because I like to break things up into thirds, here's our thirds, and there's that, and that. I'm a little bit off on this bottom one. Put it down here. But you can see I've basically put the face of the cat right on that third. These are areas where you want to put areas of focus often. They just tend to be nice, comfortable areas to put focus. And so that's where I put the head of the cat and the face, everything right there on that upper right-hand third, because I find that a very pleasing spot to do that. So there is that.
Have you ever used a Zorn palette?
I never have used a Zorn palette. I want to try it. I know Ronnie Williford, my buddy Ronnie, who's done our color course on our website, has used the Zorn palette, and I find it fascinating because it's only 4 colors, and it's very interesting. So I'd like to give it a shot. Facebook question: have you tried using? Oh, got the same one here. Did you just? Okay, gotcha. I have not tried it. Let me go back. I'm going to going back to abstract design. Let's see here. Don't save. I want to go back to photos. I want to show you some more photos that I shot whilst I was in.
If you had to pick when purchasing a painting, would you choose realism or abstract?
Probably realism, but I like realism with an abstract design. I don't want like a cat in the middle of the canvas just rendered out as a cat. I want great abstract design. So that's what I look for. I want to show you another one that I find very fascinating. I pulled these up earlier. Let me see here. That's not that one. It's not that one.
It's not that one. It's not.
Let's see, these two. They're both the same one. One's color and one's black and white. Okay, so here's our color. Now here's another one where when I was photographing it, I was seeing the abstract design first. And this is one of the reasons why I love photographing in snow, because it creates such stark abstract imagery that you can't help but get great abstract design. So obviously you can see the abstract design in this, which reminds me very much of this. Let me open the Japanese calligraphy. Where was it? This one. It kind of reminds me of this. The simplicity of this piece right here. I think you can see in here. Absolutely. And so if we put a layer over the top, let's fill that in. Let's knock that back just a little bit. Then all of a sudden, we've got, let's try using the dry brush.
Okay, how much time did you give yourself to study tiger anatomy before animating Rajah?
A few months. I gave myself a few months. So here, I'm even going to try to mimic the dry brush effect. So here, look at this. You got this great, right here. And here, I would probably raise his head up. This brush isn't quite working the way I want it to. But you can see, and actually, if I wanted to, I could continue very lightly. And you end up with a very cool, and a lot of times I will start out an image like this, and then I'll knock it way back and start refining it into something that's representational. But I'll do stuff like this just to it helps. It really helps to, if you're stuck, if you're in a if you're just artistically stuck, it really helps to just kind of throw any kind of representational image out of your head and just start making marks on a paper in a pleasing way, and then start refining that, and you'll find some really fun results. Hi, Aaron and Dustin. Have you thought about a composition design only course? I have thought about that, and I would like to do that, actually. So yes, I say yes.
Yes.
So from there, then I'd probably come in and then start to refine it, and like I said, I'd probably create a better silhouette on this bison here, so that's a little bit more clearly stated. But you can see the abstract design in this very representational image. And this is what I want you people to see, especially some of you younger artists that maybe have never been exposed to this. I want you to start thinking about breaking up your compositions in that way. Look at the world around you, not as what it is, but what is that design? What is that? How does that abstract imagery, how does that relate to you? How do you break that up? And when you see imagery like this, then you can start to understand what I'm talking about. Let me try opening up another one. I think I'm trying to remember if I.
Do you have plans of running a workshop in London at some point?
I'm going to be in London April 18th.
And we're all tag along on that trip, or
No, you're going to Japan.
I'm going to Japan.
I'm going to be in London April 18th with Bobby Chu, April 18th and 19th, for 3 days with Bobby Chu, and I'm going to be teaching there. So if you go to Bobby Chu's website, and if you're interested in getting together and hanging out, go. Nick will be able to find that, and we'd love to see you. Here's one that I pulled up earlier. Let me see what this one is. Oh, that's one I just did. Yeah, so here's one. You might notice those rocks are very familiar, or very similar, because those are some of the same rocks I photographed the links on. But once again, this is a very abstract design, right? And so, and once again, I really love. I love breaking up the space. Where am I? Where is it? 16 by 16. I'm trying to find the right one. It was, what was it? 15, 10 by 15. That's what it was.
Looks like Nick's got a question for you.
I got you. I'll just do this one. Brianna on YouTube asks, could you do a course on your site teaching about animal photography? I wouldn't call myself a great photographer. We might bring in some photographers to do that, but I wouldn't consider myself a photographer to the extent that I could teach it. I know my approach, and the stuff that you're seeing here I think is okay, but it could be a lot better. But once again, there's a cat, and it's very representational. And you can also see I've placed him kind of in that third area again. The head is off the third, but the body itself is in the third. This is not in the same composition. There we go. So let's do this. Let's come up here. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go to black. And once again, I'm just going to break up. I just want to show you the way that I see this. Space.
Do you ever use the technique of squinting your eyes to see shapes when starting a painting?
Absolutely. I do that all the time. There it is. I filled it. And, and I missed. Oh, there it is. I missed it. Right. Oh, missed. There we go. Now, I'm going to fill it. So there's that, and I want to fill that. So first of all, there's my first abstract design. It's a little bit even in the way everything's broken up. But now I can take it a step further. What if I take the gray and go here on top? And here's the cat. And once again, I'm not worried about, I don't care about the, does this silhouette look like a cat right now? I'm just looking at abstract design. I forgot some of this rock here. That would have made a difference, I think. And then we've got rock here. Actually, let me do this. Come on, baby. Oh, I can't do that. Okay. I was going to lock the layer, but I'm drawing on the background. So we got here, and boom. Fill that in. And so now I've got something that's a little more abstract. Yeah, it's just a little more broken. I've got the 3 values. And in this case, I think the values are a little evenly placed. I don't know that one is dominant, black is probably dominant, but I think the white and the gray are probably even, and one's not an accent and one's not secondary. But you can at least see the abstract design there, and that's what I'm going for. So I want you to start seeing things in that way. And you can, like I said, when you look at snow landscapes, when you look at the rock, this right here, you can definitely start to see abstract design that becomes something that's representational once you go further from that. Robert on YouTube shared this quote: "Don't draw what you see what you draw." And that is Whistler. I love that. That's a great idea. Yes, I agree with you 100%. So why don't we take, we've been at this for 43 minutes. Why don't we take a quick minute, and I'm just going to do a quick sketch, kind of taking some of these ideas, and I want to show you. I've got an image that I want to try to reproduce. Let me pull it up here. Got some really nice bison. Yes, Dustin. Yes, my son. How are you?
Hi. When you're painting, do you keep in mind color theory or just the warm and cold color design?
No, I think of color theory as well. I think warm and cool to me is more dominant, but I do think about color theory. So, for instance, if I pull up this image here, it's very subtle, but I've got complementary colors happening here. The warm that you see in the snow, it's yellow to orange. It's very, very, very light, but it's yellow and orange, and then what you see in the shadow areas of the snow are violets and blues. Complementary colors, that's color theory. It's also warm and cool. So you can't do one without the other. They go hand in hand.
And Austin just texted me saying she's on her way.
Austin is on her way with the grandkids, with the grandchildren. So I'm going to scroll through here real quick.
I think Aiden's still in school. But...
Oh, that's right. He's still in school. So here's some. These got overexposed because I forgot to. I was shooting manually and I got so excited about this elk, I forgot to change my exposure. But it actually created kind of a cool. I thought it created kind of a cool image with it being blasted out like that. I kind of liked. It was a happy mistake. So every once in a while in your photography, you'll find some really cool stuff. But once again, you'll notice I'm going out and shooting my own, scrap, my own reference. Do it as often as you can. Anytime you can, get out there and do it. Even here is a. I shot this one for the bathroom. I go all over the world, and whenever I shoot wildlife, I shoot them pooping and peeing, and I frame those and I put them in the bathroom. I do. I think it's funny. It belongs in the bathroom. Hey, Aaron, have you thought about doing paintovers of submitted work? I have thought about it, but we get so many requests, we're not quite sure how we're going to do it yet. There are some other artists that I follow that do that, and it helps us learn a lot. Yes, and I'm aware of those other artists. I know some of those other artists, and it's something we definitely want to do. We just need to figure it out, figure out the logistics of it. So here are some. There is these 4 or 5 bison bulls that were running down the road. There was a car that was following them, and I felt like the guy was harassing them actually because they were kind of running, and then they turned and went up this hill, and that was a happy accident for me because that hill really turned into a really beautiful diagonal across the image that these bison, these big massive beasts, decided to climb. And I just love the imagery of these guys climbing this hill. And this one in particular, I really love, of him coming up and climbing the hill. I've got some other ones. This is a good one too. I like getting that leg up in the air because it shows some action. He's moving. He's making his way up the hill. But some of these other ones I like because the black shapes overlap. The shapes of the bison overlap each other, and they create kind of this abstract shape that I think is interesting.
I've got a quick question here.
Sure.
Was Bambi an American deer, or was it supposed to be a European deer?
Bambi was American. He was a North American white-tailed deer.
Nice.
Yep. And let's see here. I'm looking for some.
Have you tried drawing something that you've dreamt of?
No, I've never have actually.
It looks like Nick's got you a YouTube question.
This one here, I'm interested in this one. I kind of like this. George on YouTube asks, I always remember being told off by my art teachers for wanting to work from photographs. Obviously, you do this too, Aaron, but what's your stance on it? I think photos are there to help you along, especially if you're doing representational work. It's there to help you get correct anatomy, look at lighting, that sort of thing. But I couple it with real world experience, and I couple it with not letting the reference drive my imagery. For example, I've got a post that I did on Facebook. I'm going to show you right here in this. Right here. I'm gonna pull you down, Nick, for just a second.
Nick.
Let me pull you down here. Don't bring me down. Nick.
Birch.
Okay, hold on one second. Sorry, going back. Oh my gosh, I'm such a social media dork.
But do you have a favorite Renaissance
Hold
artist?
on. I'm still trying to do this. Sorry, sorry, Dustin.
I will stop doing the thing.
Stop doing the thing. So this post right here, this is a perfect example of what I think about how I use reference. In the photo on the bottom, if I blow, is that only blow up? There we go. And the photo on the bottom, right here, that is the photo. I mean, it's cropped a little bit, but I've always loved this image. This is the photo I shot in Alaska back in 1998, and I've always had this photo, always loved it, always wanted to do something with it because I love the attitude of the bear. This bear has been eating salmon for weeks, and he or she is just absolutely stuffed. And I remember just sitting there watching it, just stare at the water. And so I took that idea, and it became my basis for this image above. And that's the image that I painted. So even though, yes, this is reference and I'm painting from a photograph, I always try to make it my own. I always try to better it. You can see I added salmon in the background to tell the story a little bit more. There's a half-eaten salmon in front of the bear. I wanted the sunlight to be shining like it's the end of the day. And this bear has been eating all day long. There's a lot of different things that I put in here that make it my own. And a lot of times I'll just work straight out of my head, and I'll use photographs as reference to make sure I'm doing anatomy correctly or whatever it might be. But yes, it's a very long-winded answer to your question. I totally believe in using photo reference, and there we go. And it's definitely okay. It's just how you use it. The other thing too is I get very, very touchy about using other people's photographs, like going to Google and copying off of Google and claiming it as your own as an image. That to me is a no-no. That's plagiarism. It's no good. And so don't do that. That's why I'm very adamant about shooting my own reference, my own photographs, and I use them for my paintings. There we go. Sorry, Dustin.
No worries. Do you have a favorite Renaissance artist that inspired you to become an artist yourself?
Not really. I wouldn't say favorite Renaissance artists. No, not at all, actually. But there was a lot of... When I was younger, there was artists that I looked up to before I knew about Renaissance and all the other different movements in art history. There were artists that I followed just because I loved their work. And so a lot of them were wildlife artists like Robert Bateman and John Siri Lester. Robert Bateman was probably my biggest art hero, along with Frank Frazetta, who did fantasy. So between Frank Frazetta and Robert Bateman, those are the guys that really made me want to be an artist. They were completely two different genres, but I really loved what they did. So here I'm going to start a new image. Let's go 15 by 10. Whoops, by 10. All right. And let's go ahead and open this one up. And what's interesting here, the one thing we can do is really shrink it. And when you shrink it way down to well, if you're watching this on a phone, then you're really going to see, you won't be able to see it. But I shrink it down and blur my eye at it, and it really becomes this abstract shape. So what I'm seeing on here, I'm going to move this up here.
Do you like Vermeer?
Yeah, I love Vermeer. Yep. Oh, I got to jump over to Nick. There. YouTube question. How long should one spend time refining their sketch when starting on a piece? You'd spend as much time as it takes. I can't answer that question because that's your own. I don't like to refine too much. You'll see that sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll go a little rougher. But yeah, you don't have to worry too much about it. It's all personal. Oh, I hear a beautiful little girl out there. That's my granddaughter. So here, just really quick, I'm going to wrap this up soon because this is really just all about, how do I approach abstract design. And so here, I'm going to go a little rougher. That's my granddaughter. If you can hear her back there.
She's still scared of me.
Oh yeah, well, who wouldn't be?
That's true. I got a scary mug.
So here I'm drawing this bison. But you can see I'm trying to go somewhat abstract with all of this. We turn this, there we go. Okay.
Hero Avalon has entered the building.
Yes. Yes, she has. Avalon. The mists of Avalon. So here, so you can, look how abstract this is, but you can still tell what it is, which is something I find fascinating with.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, so there's that. But then at the same time, I'm going to let that run right into this guy. And we're going to draw him completely out here. There we go. And there's that back leg coming down. Like so. And then coming into the other leg. And it all connects right here. So now this looks like one solid kind of weird shape. If you forget the idea that it's two bison, you've got this interesting black shape on the paper.
Somebody commented about me saying that she's scared. She's still scared of me.
Yeah.
I wrote, my kids were afraid of my brother until they were nearly 3. So I'm not the only one. Yay!
Neloid on YouTube asked, "What kind of teenager were you?" I was a pretty good teenager. I was a little bit of a troublemaker when I was younger. I was a bit of a delinquent, but as I got older, I became a pretty good teenager. I did. I was. I actually never drank, never did any of that stuff. Never partied. I was all about the art and girls. I spent a lot of time at the beach, surfing and skimboarding and that sort of thing. YouTube question. I'm an art teacher in a private school, grades kindergarten through 8th grade. What do you think is the most important art knowledge they should know before entering high school? I think the biggest thing is just getting in the habit. For me, I think it's the habits of drawing from life. Obviously, you don't want to start squashing creativity at all at a young age. And so if they want to be, let them be creative in their own ways. I've always believed. And but also, I think that they're as they get older, towards high school, obviously younger, let them be as free as they want, in my opinion. But as they get older, I do think they need to start understanding the discipline of art. What are some of the rules that we've created as artists that we follow, and those are some like what I'm teaching today. Abstract work and how to see the world. I also think that getting them in the habit of keeping visual journals, sketchbooks, that's huge. Seeing the world around you in that way, I think is huge. And so those are my 2 cents. If I'd gone back, those are some of the things I wish would have been pushed on me. Is keeping a visual journal and sketchbooks.
Do you like the Akira animations?
I do like the Akira animations. So here's the start of, this is somewhat abstract, right? And what I might do, look at this. So now that I've got something down, I go, you know what? It feels too balanced. So I can take this now, and I'm going to go, boom, boom. I'm going to grab those 2 pieces, and I'm going to push them up. Push them up, push them up, push them up, push them up. I want to feel like they've really pushed up this hill. Now, see, this is the beauty of working at this, working like this. because it's pure design at this point. It's just pure design. So now I'm looking at it just for purely from a design standpoint. And then once I get this working right, now I go, okay, now I like that, okay, but now maybe if let's pull this over. I want to create a little tension on the right, not too much tension, but I want to create a little bit of tension by pulling this over. I don't want it to make a tangent on the right side, but I want it to be a little more heavy on the right side. And what this does is you can see the bison that's in the background, it puts his head right on the third. And I like that. So this is what I'll do a lot of times when I'm trying to find my compositions. I'll go back and forth and really work them quite a bit. Going back, shrinking them, turning the whole format, just really working until I find something that I like. And it starts with that abstract design like we're doing here. And then once I get something that I like, then it's just a matter of, like, I can take these two and I'm going to meld them together. And then all I have to do is knock it back, create a new layer. And now, what can I do? I can sit down and I can start to draw. And now I can make the transition into something more representational. So I can come through and just like this. Oh, she's so cute. She takes after her grandfather, you know.
Is abstract design something filmmakers think of a lot when doing modern black and white films, like Roma, for example?
Absolutely.
It's very pleasing to look at.
Exactly. You nailed it right on the head. So I'm glad that you've made that transition, because it's not just flat painting art. It's all art, including filmmaking. You want to look at, great filmmaking has great abstract design. And so many of our films, that's what we look at first. And here we go. I'm going to bring this way back like this. So there. Because this foot here, there's the hip, knee, she sounds like Boo.
Sounds like Jack Jack.
Oh yeah.
Here she is.
Hi.
Oh, she saw me. Yeah, she went like this. She saw me and went, oh.
So there we go. So here, I start to break it down like so. So here he is climbing up that hill, and get one more done here. And this is, find that abstract design first and then start to work it. And here we are. This is the beginning stages of turning into something that's representational. And you can see now we're getting something that's a bit more pleasing, and you can start to feel the abstract, that design in it.
That was a great baby impression, Dustin. That wasn't me.
So there, you can see I'm taking those big splotches and turning them into representational work. Turning them into bison. Just like so. And so within another 5 hours or so, we'll have a finished painting. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this painting. But what was really important for me is for you to see how I start. And you can see it didn't take very long because, first of all, I started out with something that was very abstract to begin with. But I try to find that abstract design first. And then from there, I try to, then I start to, create the artwork or the image. And we got a lot of scrub. This is all sage sticking up out of the snow. This sage is about 3 feet tall, so that tells you how deep the snow is. So there you go. So there's a couple of bison climbing this hill. There we go. And that's going to turn into a painting. But now you can see the way I think about black and white, abstract. I really recommend go and look at Japanese calligraphy. Look at the art of that. Look at Franz Kline. And look at it for what I've talked about here today in a way to break up a two-dimensional space into pleasing shapes, pleasing areas, negative space, positive space, and then try to make that leap from what you see with Franz Kline's work to representational work and how we look at landscape, the way we look at animals in the landscape, that sort of thing, and how those two relate to each other, because when you break it down to just those abstract elements, they very much are the same. And it's just that one is taken much further, the representational side of things is taken much further, but underneath all of that lighting and fur and everything else lies an abstract design, and that's what I want you to see. So, I hope you enjoyed that today. I hope you got something out of it. I am going to go take care of my granddaughter, and I'm going to go have fun with her. Oh, here she is. Here's my granddaughter. So this is Avalon. Avalon, look at camera. Can you look up here? Do you see? How are you? Oh, mommy's right here. So mommy's here too. This is my daughter, Austin.
Hi.
Camera's right here.
Hi, camera.
No, you got to come in, poke your head in. So, obviously, Avalon wants to be with mommy. But I've got to go. I hope you guys learned something. I had a really great time. Look at the world with an abstract eye. That's really important. Start looking at the world in a different way, and you might find that your images become cooler and a little bit more sophisticated. Rather than just taking an object and placing it in the middle of the canvas and copying it, or just copying from your photographs, let those things work for you. Find the abstract in the world and create something better. Okay? So that's my lesson for today. I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. Go out, put some beauty back in the world. Use the abstract designs that I was talking about. Maybe try something like that. Be nice to somebody. Open the door for somebody. Put your grocery cart away. Don't drive in the fast lane all the time. Get over so I can get by you. It drives me nuts.
I can get by you. Get out of my way.
Get out of my way. I got to get someplace.
Get out of my way.
That's me being nice to people in the world. But anyway, be nice to somebody. Make the world better for somebody else, and you'll feel better about yourself, too. So with that, Dustin, take it away. Oh, I'll see you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. See you guys.